I had the thought that like, "Oh, I'll never ever be able to run that fast." And then when I came out and ran a 2:30, it was like just opened up a whole new world of possibilities.
Are you running a marathon? Oh my god, I could never run a marathon. You sure about that? My god, a marathon? That's like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me, but not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Christian Warwick, aka Warwick Runs on Instagram and YouTube, and also sometimes on TikTok. Not there that much, but anyways, I'm very happy to have you here. Happy to talk to you again and bring you another episode of the Marathon Podcast. Today we are joined by Elena Hayday, who placed 12th in the New York City Marathon. She was not super happy with that race, but she is proving that she is one of the best American runners. She's really up there, and I loved hearing her story. She did kind of the same thing as Jess McLean, where she took a couple of years of running at some point, and then she found the love of running back again, and now she's here running fast times. And we had a great talk about her running journey, about how her training is. She's training with some of the best runners in the world, with Joel, who was on the podcast yesterday. She's training with Dakota Popane. A lot of good teammates that are pushing her, and she is really able to kind of compare herself to the best American runners every day, which I think is a great advantage. Really, really good and nice conversation with Elena, and I appreciate her coming on. I thought before we jump into that conversation, I would just give you a quick update on my own running. It's not really going out well. I thought I was back. I had double-digit case earlier this week, and then all of a sudden my lungs did not feel good. And so now I've been to the doctor. I've been taking x-rays. Lungs look good, but super frustrating. Had a call with John earlier today, and we just agreed that we'll take it very slowly going forward next week. 10-minute jogs. It's really weird how you can go from running a 2:47 marathon and then just a few weeks later struggling to get through a few Ks of running. And so this is very unpredictable, really weird. Haven't had that before. I really appreciate all of you reaching out and asking how I'm doing. But yeah, I even struggle at times to talk to the microphone. Find myself being a bit like, and you can probably hear that in the microphone. So sorry about that if that's the case in this episode as well. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I do feel like I have control. The doctors are taking a lot of tests, and they can't find anything that is really worrying. And I'm happy to know that at least. And hopefully, I'll be back running soon. I just have to be more patient. So that's just a quick update on me. Let's jump to the conversation with Elena. And a little spoiler, I gave her a little surprise in the middle of the episode. So it was fun to see her reaction. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast, Elena. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. And thank you for coming on. We briefly talked before we started recording here, and you told me that stairs have not been your best friend this week.
No, they really haven't been, and I live on the second floor, so it's been a little bit of a tough week, but I would say every day has been getting better, which is probably to be expected. The first couple days, I was like, "I think I just have to stay on the second floor," but I went up and down this morning already, and it was okay.
That's good. So it's improvement.
Improvement, yeah.
Great. Before we start talking about everything running, why don't you present yourself and a little bit about your background as a runner?
Sure. So my name is Elena Hayday. I grew up in Minnesota. My primary sports were actually volleyball and softball throughout like most of my childhood. I did like one season of track in middle school and was okay at it, but didn't love it. And then when I was a freshman in high school, my parents went to the like parent track and field meeting without me and told the coach that I would be able to run a 60-second 400, with, like, no context for that. And so they were like, "Okay, just try for 1 season," and I ended up being able to do it, surprisingly.
Wow.
So he put me on varsity, and I still played volleyball until about junior year of high school. I actually tried one season junior year doing both volleyball and cross country, and it was, like, sort of disastrous. I was just really tired all the time. And so senior year, I think it became clear that I was much better at running than I was at volleyball, so I kinda shifted over to running only. And then I ran a couple years at the University of Minnesota, so stayed close to home. Um, it wasn't great. I actually ended up quitting. It was just not something that I was able to handle with my course load, and I was just honestly not happy doing it. I wasn't having fun with running, so I decided to kinda put it on the back burner for a while, and I tried for, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months to train myself, and I ended up running a marathon when I was still in college, and it was really bad. Like, I would say the first, like, 21 or 22 miles, I was, like, laughing and smiling and, like, high-fiving people, and I hadn't known how to fuel, so when I hit the wall, I hit it hard, and I walked. Like, I was walking. Um, and then I moved out to DC for a couple years to work at the National Institutes of Health, and at that point, I was kind of unsure what I wanted to do with running. I was like, "Maybe I'll just keep kind of, training myself and doing it for fun," but I wanted friends because I was new to the city, and so they have this sub-elite team called Georgetown Running Club, and I was like, "Okay, I'll just go out for a couple of practices." Ended up really liking the people, and I don't know, I guess running just started, like, creeping back more into my life, and I started getting better and a lot better than I was in college, and it started being fun. So I did that for about 2.5 years, qualified for the Olympic marathon trials out of the half, and then again in the full, for 2024, and then I decided to go to grad school back in Minnesota, and we have a really great team here, an elite team called Minnesota Distance Elite, and I reached out to the coach and was like, "I'm already coming back for grad school, like, what do you think about me being on the team?" And I don't think that there's a lot of pro coaches who would be willing to train, like, a first-year PhD student. Like, I think that was a little crazy, but, Chris Lundstrom, the coach, actually ran for this team when he was doing his PhD, so he was a lot more open to it than I think a lot of people would be. And the first year was pretty tough, probably as expected, like, classes were hard. Running was definitely on the back burner, but I feel like it's coming around to be, something that I put more of my energy into this year, and I think that's been a little bit more reflected in my performances, so, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Great. As a Norwegian, Minnesota is, in Norway, we know Minnesota as kind of the Norwegian state in the US. Do you
Yeah.
also have a relationship to that?
No, other than that, it's cold. My family is Ukrainian, so not from up there, but
No. Yeah, I remember when I was taking over an apartment here in Norway, and there was this guy, and his name was Asher, and he looked super Norwegian, and I totally thought he was Norwegian, and then it turned out that he was from Minnesota, and he was like, yeah, most people in Minnesota has Norwegian genes somehow, so I think that's where a lot of people just moved to from Norway. So I think that as a Norwegian, Norway is such a small country. So I
mhm.
feel like whenever Norway is mentioned anywhere, we're just so proud. And that is kind of become the thing with Minnesota because that's a reference that at least we hear a lot, or maybe we like to make that reference a lot. But yeah,
No,
a little
I've definitely
digression.
heard it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Cool. So tell me a little bit more about that first marathon that you did, because it's not that common to do that when you're in college, right?
No, it's really not. So as I mentioned, I had quit my college team, and I think I was really trying to find myself in running because it had been something at that point that I'd been doing continuously for like 5 years, 5 or 6 years. And I think the marathon just felt so different from running on the track. And so I was like, this is a way for me to separate myself from college running. I'm really trying something new. It's going to be a new type of training. And I went out and bought like the marathon handbook, like those. I don't know if that's Heisinger, I think, and was reading them and was like, "I'll just figure this out and see if I like it." And I actually had a lot of fun doing the training, and I ran a 5K PR at the time when I was training myself for the marathon. I mean, and granted, that's not that fast for me. At that time, it was like 16:21, but I was a 17:10 5K runner in college, so I was like, "Okay,
Uh-huh.
something's working." So I actually do think that I got pretty fit. I think I just really underestimated the distance. So I did a local marathon, it's the Twin Cities Marathon that's here that goes between Minneapolis and St. Paul, and it's, like, a little hilly, it's not that bad, except for there's a hill going up Summit Avenue for the last, like, 4 miles, and then you dip down at the very end, and that was where I hit the wall. And I think that whole time I probably took 2 gels, maybe. I just had no
Wow.
idea what was going on, and I remember I actually talked to a few people at, Mill City Running, which is, like, a local running club beforehand, and they were like, "Yeah, maybe go out at, like, 6:40, 6:30 pace," and I think I went out at, like, 6:10 and was like, "Yeah, I'm killing it." Like, I just had no idea what was going on. But and I said
So
I'd never run another one, and I have, so
yeah. So what was your time for that first one, although you bunked?
it was a 2:54.
2:54. Yeah. So that's still a very good first marathon.
Yeah, I think the time was okay, it was more the experience was
Yeah.
bonking
Yeah.
is so unpleasant.
Mhm. So when you moved to DC, so I didn't get like how old are you now?
I just turned 26.
26. So you're still very young in the marathon game, and you have a lot of years in front of you there. But when you moved to DC and you started running more, how quickly did you kind of mm, start thinking that the marathon distance was something that you wanted to do? Was that based on that first experience with the marathon that was kind of a no-brainer, or was that something that just came to life later?
I think it came to life later, I think it was sort of sneaking up on me, like, I was doing longer road races, like 10 miles and half marathon and having a lot of success. And so it was kind of in the back of my mind, like, I think I'm gonna have to go back to the marathon, but again, as that experience had been so unpleasant, I was like, "Maybe I'll wait a couple of years. I don't think I need to do this again." And I think I was, like, 22 when I did my first one, and so, the coach on that team that I joined in DC was like, "You have time, like, we don't need to push it."
And so when was the next one that you did?
Next one was in 2023. It's when I did grandma's, and that was my first, like, elite marathon because I had run 1:11.5 at that point, and so we were pretty sure I could run a lot faster than 2:54.
Will you take us through that race and that
Yeah,
experience?
yeah. That race, it was actually really fun. I feel like that was what kind of lit the fire again. So I had sort of a shorter build up. Now I'm trying to think back. So I didn't end up going to med school, but I took the MCAT that winter, and so I wasn't running at all. And then I sort of came back into it doing some shorter races, and then we were like, "Okay, we wanna do a marathon." I think at that point, I had, like, 5 or 6 weeks until the marathon, so it was a pretty short buildup, and I kinda had it in my mind that I could run, like, 2:30, 2:31, but wasn't really gonna try to push it too hard, except then I got off the start line and ran a couple of miles in, like, the 5:30s and was like, "Okay, I think we need to stop this." And then I actually found, Jess McLean ran that race before she became, like, amazing. This was when she was still unsponsored, and so we ran some miles together at, like, 5:45, and I was feeling pretty good, and I remember when I got to, like, the 18-mile mark, I started, like, emotionally preparing myself for the bonk because that's what happened the first time, and I was, like,
Yeah.
clicking off every mile being like, "Okay, I think it's coming, I think it's coming," and then it never came. And I think I credit that I learned a lot more about fueling for that race, so with grandmas, they have aid stations every 5K, I think, or, like, elite bottle tables every 5K, And I still wasn't taking that much in because I was using powders and, like, drink mixes, and I just wasn't drinking that much, but it was certainly more than my first marathon. So I think I can probably credit that a lot for the not bonking, but my last mile was my fastest in that marathon. So I think I finished and was pretty excited about, staying at the marathon distance.
And what was your time for that one?
That was a 2:30:51, so quite a big jump in the PR.
Yeah, because that's what I wanted to talk about. I feel like or I know that when you run that fast in a marathon, that kind of places you in uh, kind of, I don't know, a group of runners or athletes who are very much up there. What did that do to you as a marathon runner and your thoughts about your future as a marathon runner?
I think I had a similar thought, honestly, going in that I was like, "This is gonna change my life," and then, honestly, like, nothing really changed. Like, I, stayed at my job. I was like and I think in my head, it kind of opened up possibilities. Like, I started thinking like, "Okay, now it's time to try and to get into the 220s," which is just something after you run a 2:54 marathon that's, like, nowhere on your mind. So I think it opened up possibilities there, but I think otherwise it was kinda just back to the grind.
I love that. It's kind of, I feel like a lot of people, at least from the outside, you think that everything will change, and then still hear these stories of, oh, nothing really changed. It was just you wake up the day after and things are just like they were the day before. But in terms of your motivation, did it change the way you looked at, you know, your own journey going forward?
It's a good question. I think sort of. I think something that I'm still struggling with is I don't really put myself in, like, the pro or the elite category at this point, even though I probably should. So it's like I've never really had, like, Olympic aspirations, so I can't say that that's the thing that came from it. But I do think I don't know, it opened up yeah, it opened up time possibilities that I'd never had because I think when the trial standard came out for the 2024 trials, so it was 2:37, I had the thought, um, I had the thought that, like, "Oh, I'll never ever be able to run that fast." And then when I came out and ran a 2:30, it was, like, just opened up a whole new world of possibilities. So, yeah. But yeah, I kind of thought that, I would come off of running a 2:30 and I'd have, people knocking at my door to sponsor, but it's not really how it works. I think you have to run like a 2:24 for that to happen, but, that's the goal. So, yeah, maybe ask me after I get the next PR.
Yeah. But then I mean, at least for me, watching you in New York, I definitely do see you as one of those athletes that are up there. Will you say something about, your training and how, or not necessarily your training right now, but more like the journey from Grandma's and up to New York this weekend? I know that you weren't like super happy with this weekend, but at least for me from the outside, I still think that it shows your potential.
Yeah, I hope that's true. But yeah, so I was after grandma's, I was with that team in DC for a couple years, and I ran another marathon in 2024. I actually did grandma's again, and that was another pretty short build up. Oh, I guess I should say. So I ran about 17 miles of the Olympic trials marathon and I dropped out. And it was because I was overheated and also had an Achilles injury at the time, but that I think was just, like, a huge hit, to me psychologically, and so I ran track that spring of 2024, and then I was like, "I really think I need to run another marathon," so I did another pretty short build-up and, ran grandma's the next year in a 2:31, so, pretty similar, but I was honestly just happy to be able to finish. And then it was after that, so summer of 2024, that left DC and moved to Minneapolis. So as I mentioned, the team in DC was a sub-elite team, so I was training with a lot of men at the time, which was great, and they're all really great pacers. But coming to Minnesota Distance Elite was kind of a huge change because some of the people on this team are like Dakota Popane and Annie Frisbee, like people who are truly, like, top of the top US marathoners, um, and so I feel like the training changed a lot, but also just my mindset has had to change a lot because I think before I was on this team, I was just like, "These are people that I could never work out with," but they've really encouraged me to just, like, try my best, see how long I can keep up with them, and I've been keeping up with them a lot longer in workouts than I thought that I would be able to. So, the buildup I mostly did with, Annie Frisbee, who ended up getting 5th at New York. She did amazing, and we had a lot of long workout sessions where I was actually able to keep up with her the entire time, so I feel like that was just, like, a massive confidence boost, and I honestly think that's why part of the reason why I do feel disappointed about my time in New York is that I did start to see myself as, like, a person who could run up at the front with people like Dakota and Annie, and I still think I can. It maybe didn't happen this weekend, but I think it will. So, yeah, I think a lot of this build was really just confidence building.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And it must be so nice to, although, like you said, you might not be super happy with the result itself from New York, but being able to see that from the block and training with people at that level to see that,
Mhm.
like, on a daily basis, you're able to actually compare yourself and see that I'm definitely up there. And at least I remember
Absolutely.
from, yeah. I remember from when I was a speed skater, then it was always nice to be in those groups and know that if you are able to compete with these guys in training, you are competing with the best in the world because that's kind of the case, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think with the team I was running with in DC, just because I was mostly running with, like, sub-elite men, I just wasn't mentally putting myself there.
And I hate to, I don't know if that is something that you don't want to talk about, but I'm still curious because we are with New York. I mean, because we are as spectators are watching it, we just see the runs, and it's always impossible to say exactly what happens, what the issues are, and we can only speculate when we see that people are losing that pace. Can you take us through that race because you were doing pretty well for a very long time?
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. So let's see, I'm just gonna start from the beginning, and I guess I'll say that going in, my coach and I had planned hoping to run, around, like, a 2:28, and although I am trying to, mentally put myself up with, like, Annie and Dakota, I do know that trying to run, like, 2:22 pace is probably gonna make me go lactic pretty early, and that's gonna be tough to deal with, so we had kind of made a plan going in to go with the pack as long as they're running over 5:30, and after that, I let them go, and unfortunately, that was mile 3. So, we were going up the bridge on the first mile, I think it was like a 5:40 or a 5:50, and then down the bridge was a 5:09, I was like, "Okay, we're going downhill, that's fine." And then, like, the next 2 miles were, like, a 5:25, and I was like, "I gotta this is my half PR, I think I gotta let them go." So I did end up running almost the entire race by myself, and I thought that that would be a huge mental challenge, but I think just by virtue of, like, the amount of people screaming on the sidelines, it really like, I felt good, and, yeah, all through Brooklyn was rolling, like, 5:35s, which is pretty much as planned because the second half is harder. And I think right around the bridge between Brooklyn and Queens, I caught, Sarah Hall and Molly Seidel because I think they had also let go of that lead pack at some point, and I've been kind of looking at them going all through Brooklyn, and I finally got them and so went up over Queensboro, and kind of this whole time I'd had, like, low level kind of stomach cramping, but I've had GI issues in the past, and so I was just kinda like, "We're just gonna ignore it, I think it will be okay." And, yeah, went down First Avenue, went through the Bronx. I was, like, starting to get kind of tired, but I felt like I had the pace still kind of under control. And then going back up that big hill on Fifth Avenue, I could see Susanna, and I think I probably expended a little bit too much effort trying to get to her because I was like, "Ooh, I think I can catch her." And it's still kind of baffling because I felt like even though I was working pretty hard, my stomach was okay, but I took that right turn off of Fifth Avenue into the park, and all of a sudden just started retching, and I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna pull off to the side and throw up once." And it was like waves sorry, this is gross, but it was like waves of vomit, like, I
You're
think I
good.
must have vomited, like, 5 times in a row, and there was just tons of spectators, and, there's oh my gosh, there was this child who I think thought I was coming over for a high five, so he, like, put
Oh
his
no.
hand I didn't
No.
throw up on it, but I
Good.
got pretty close, and the parents, like, pulled him back, but then he was a really intense child, like, as I was throwing up, he was like, "It's a battle," and I was like, "Oh my god." I don't know what was he was just really into the marathon, I don't know, but, the paramedics came over and were, like, asking if I wanted help, and I was like, "I think I'm okay," and then magically, this girl from my old team in DC, she must have been around there cheering, and I texted her later and she said she, like, saw me go to the ground to throw up and she, like, showed up and was like, "I think she's okay, like, this woman is from my team, like, I think you can let her finish." And so I kept telling them, "I think I wanna finish, I think I wanna finish," and they were like, "Okay, we're gonna follow behind you in the cart just in case you pass out," because I was, like, I guess, white at that point, or, like, pale. But I felt like after I got back on, back on the horse, started running again, my pace was okay. Like, that mile that I threw up ended up being an 8:12 because I spent so much of it just, like, on the ground in the fetal position throwing up. But then my mile after that was, like, a 5:37, and then my last mile, I think, was a little bit slower just because it's an uphill. But I felt like I still had the legs at that point, I had just given up too much time. Um, so yeah, I don't know, I feel like I'm coming out of it feeling like it was almost like my breakthrough, but it just ended up missing it, and I do have GERD, which I'm not sure if you know what that is.
No, not familiar with that. What is
It's,
that?
gastroesophageal reflux disease, so basically, like, your esophageal sphincter, um, isn't working correctly, and so you can have stomach acid come back up, and I've had that since I was
Oh,
a kid, and it is somewhat stress related, and I've felt like I've had it under control a lot, but I'm guessing that that probably played a factor in the nausea, but yeah, so I'm feeling good about the fact that, my legs were good. I felt like my mindset was really good, which is a thing that I was worried about when I let the lead pack go. I was like, "I don't know if, rolling alone for 23 miles, I'm gonna feel confident," but I did. So, some things are good, it's just that the nutrition piece maybe or just, like, the stomach piece wasn't quite there, but I think there's a lot of good takeaways.
definitely. I think so, and it's very impressive. Because what place did you get in total, or at the end?
12.
Um, yeah. So 12th place with that incident and an 8 something mile in the middle of it. I mean, like, if you look at it, it's still very good.
Yeah, I will say, not to bring myself down a peg, but nobody passed me while I was throwing up. So I feel
No.
like that was mostly just lucky. Like, I think I could have lost a lot more places if I had had people there, because I think the people I ended up passing were not having good days, ended up dropping out. So could I don't really feel like I earned 12th place, but that is how it ended up.
Yeah, I still think it says a lot about your level. I understand, like, if I was in your situation, I probably would have said the same thing, but I still think that it's important to look at it and see that that's where you're at on a very bad day, regardless of people dropping out or whatever. You are still number 12 in the biggest marathon in the world, which is, at least for me, I would say that's very good.
Well, I appreciate that. I probably need to hear that. I tend to be pretty hard on myself if you haven't picked up on that.
No,
So this, yeah, it's
I
nice to
get
hear
that.
it.
But I also think that, that can be a strength if you use it in the right way. But
Yeah.
I think it's important to take those small victories still. But you did mention that you were hoping that this could be your big breakthrough.
Mhm.
And in some ways, I would say that it still is. But uh, do you run for Puma, or is it just that? How is that? Because I saw that you were running with Puma and their gear. Do you have a deal with them somehow?
I do not. So they have done about 3 instances of this project. I don't know what to call it other than a project, called Project 3, where they have like 100 athletes each time running major marathons, and they provide shoes and gear. It's something that you apply for. And then they also bring people in to talk about like nutrition and mindset and stuff. And I think the overall idea is to show off how fast their shoes are, which, yes, they are very fast.
Yeah, they're very fast.
So yes, I really like them, and to be honest, I wasn't sure that they were gonna let me in because it was, marketed for, like, sub-elite people, but they let me in, and also, if I'm being honest, I mostly wanted the shoes, and yes, they are in fact great. So that's why I was running in Puma, but I am unsponsored. But our team does have a lot of, like, really great local sponsors, and so generally, I don't ever have to pay for shoes because we have TC Running Company, that provides us with gear, just not Puma shoes because they don't carry them, so
Got it. Now, I don't know if you. Oh, that's my dog. Do, I
sorry.
assume I assume you know who Erika Kemp is.
I do.
Yeah. So she's actually the reason why I reached out to you. So first of all, a big shout out to Erica because I offered her the Marathon Podcast sponsorship, and she said you should give it to someone who doesn't have a sponsorship. And I don't know if you heard about the Marathon Podcast sponsorship or
I
if you know
did
what that
because
is.
I lightly know Julia Patternine. We raced each
Mm-hmm.
other a couple years ago, and I saw that on her feed.
Yeah. So this is not a big sponsorship. It doesn't make you a professional athlete overnight or full-time athlete or anything, but it's a contribution. So hopefully it can be used for, a training camp or expenses, whatever it is. If you want to go on a shopping trip, whatever you want to do it, I don't care. But I want to offer that to you. And you have to thank Erica for that because she was the one who actually tipped me and told me about your New York marathon. So in a way,
Mm.
your New York City Marathon actually gave you a little bit of a sponsorship. Although it's not a huge one, it's still a little bit of a sponsorship. So that yeah, you have to text Eric after.
Wow, that's really sweet. Thank you. Sorry, I'm gonna not cry on this podcast. But yeah, I really appreciate that. And I will say, um, as much as, we do have external sponsors from the team, being in grad school, I'm like not allowed to get another job, and so there's some things, that like massage and acupuncture that I'm like I would love to do, and it just hasn't really been financially in the cards. So
Hmm.
I will definitely use it well. I appreciate that.
Awesome. That is exactly what it's supposed to be too. I at least for me, like the reason why I have this is that I want to give back to the community. It's always a great way to kind of I want this podcast to be known also as the podcast that sponsors athletes. So there's marketing in it, but I don't want you to do anything. I don't want anything back from you. It's more like exactly what you're saying. I want you to be able to prioritize things that you maybe wouldn't have been able to prioritize if you didn't have it. And yeah, so happy to sponsor you and. Just wanted to let you know that that New York City Marathon was worth more than maybe you thought. So that's good.
Wow. Yeah, that feels good. Thank
Hmm.
you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious to hear more about, how you got to where you are because you told me that you quit running for a while. It reminds me a lot of Jess McLean's story. She
Mhm.
talked about how she took some time off and got back and when you started running again, was it DC that you kind of took it back up, that you had a break and then, yeah?
Yeah, I started running kind of on my own and a little bit with, like, a local running club in Minneapolis, but I wasn't doing it super seriously, I would say.
Yeah. So when you started running again, or when you started doing it a bit more seriously, did you then have a coach helping out, or were you self-coached at the time?
I did have a coach helping me out, yeah. So, on that Georgetown running club that I mentioned, that was the DC running club, there's a head coach, and the funny thing about DC is everybody does, like, kind of a weird government job on the side, so my coach is actually a lawyer for the DOJ and just, like, coaching on the side, and he's mostly a track coach, but yeah, the funny thing about GRC, Georgetown Running Club, is that he writes, like, one workout and everybody does it just at different paces, and so I kind of moved up through the pace groups, like, I think I showed up the first day and was like, "Okay, I'll try to run with, like, the A group women," and then actually was running a little bit too fast and got yelled at by one of the girls, and so I talked to that coach after, and he was like, "You know, maybe we try having you run with, like, the C group guys, and just, like, maybe that will, you know, ruffle less feathers." And I was actually really scared. I contemplated not joining the team because I looked at the paces he wrote for the C group guys and was like, "That doesn't seem like a thing that I can do." And I think, like, the first month of that, I was getting dropped, I was not finishing workouts, and then, I don't know, my body just came around and I started being able to do it. My times got a lot faster. I think the first race I ran for that team was the Cherry Blossom 10 miler, which is like a flat 10 miler in Washington, DC, and I ran 54:32, and I'd never run very long at, like, below 5:30 pace before that, and I think I was kind of shocked, my coach was kind of shocked, and yeah, I think part of it I actually really love doing high mileage, which is something that I wasn't really allowed to do in college, and that was something that I started doing on my own, and then with the coach at GRC, I just didn't tell him what mileage I was doing. I was just kind of doing it on my own, but I feel like it's helped me get a lot faster, and with my current coach, we have a training log, so I do the mileage that he suggests, but I feel like that has been a huge boost, just to get, like, the aerobic fitness up.
Yeah, so other than the mileage, or you being a high mileage runner, what would you say that your body responds the best to? Because that's something that I've realized after having this podcast. There are so many different ways of training, and a lot of people are fast, but some people have no easy running, and some people have only easy running, or just obviously not just easy running. But what is it that your body responds the best to?
Okay, I think I have to say this because if people that know me listen to this podcast, I have historically had an issue with doing my easy miles easy. And I think for a long time that has actually helped me build aerobic fitness, but just towards like the middle of this build, I stopped doing that. And so I'm hesitant to be like, oh, I love doing easy runs easy because everyone's going to be like, that's BS. So for a long time, I was doing most of my easy run mileage at like 6:45 pace. And I feel like that has done a good job of, like, kicking off fitness, but with my old coach at GRC, we did a lot of track workouts faster than lactate threshold pace, and I have felt like that combined with running my easy runs too fast has it kinda just left me feeling a little bit beat up. So that is why I'm trying to slow down some runs, but I think with my current coach, he does a lot of work, like strength work specifically for the marathon. Um, that's very aerobic and you don't really go below like lactate threshold on the roads. So, for example, we did a workout that was 12 miles alternating, so 1 mile at lactate threshold and then 1 mile at float. So that was like 5:50 pace. So between like 5:25 and 5:50 for 12 miles. And I felt like that was something that both during the workout and afterwards felt very good on my body, like, I didn't feel super beat up after. I think sometimes the fast track work, is just not something that my muscles like very much, and I think for the marathon, you don't necessarily have to do it. So that is a thing that I've appreciated with my current coach is that he's willing to kind of make that adjustment.
Yeah, because that was my next question in terms of speed work. Obviously, your parents predicted that you were going to do a 60-second 400 or whatever, but so that means that you did have some speed in you from a younger age, from maybe the running that you did when you were younger. How much would you contribute, like, of that, not your parents, but that running when you were younger to your now marathon shape?
That's a good question, and I do think I should have mentioned this, that my first year doing track, I actually thought I was/forced my coach to let me be a sprinter. Like, I ran the 200 and the 400 only, and I feel like every year he just kind of, like, made me go a little longer. Like, I think the year after he was like, "Let's do an 800," and then after that, he was like, "Let's do a 1,600," and then by the time I got to college, I was doing, like, the 3K and the 5K, but I do think that this, like, slowly moving up in distance every year has really helped just, like, build a lot of strength, um, and I will say I definitely do still have some speed. I don't think I could run a 60-second 400 anymore, but we've done a couple workouts that ended with 400s, and they were, like, 69 or 70 seconds, and I think generally I tend to have a pretty good kick on the roads. I maybe had, less so at New York, but I think that that definitely probably comes from that place of being speedy back when I was, like, 14. But I don't know, I think the more that you train a certain way, the more that you recruit that type of muscle fiber, so I probably don't have those fast twitch muscle fibers anymore. But yeah, I think I do have somewhat of a kick, I just have to, get fit enough to be with the top group before I show it, but yeah.
Yeah, because I would just think that it's definitely an advantage having at least had that pace in you, regardless of you using it on a daily or weekly basis right now, that it still is something that you can take advantage of. Because
For sure.
a lot of marathoners, I feel like they're struggling with, it's not necessarily that their endurance isn't that good, but it's just that getting to that pace in the first place is hard, and then you have to train your body to get to that pace and then train your endurance on that pace, if that makes sense. And so I
Yeah, that
guess, like,
definitely makes
coming
sense.
from shorter distances, that could at least be like, okay, you have this speed or in you, and then you just need to work on being able to sustain that speed or pace over a longer time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of it is also mental tricks, like, I ran a bunch of track races last spring, and my track goal 5K pace is, like, 5 flat, and I think part of it was just to have fun on the track, but part of it was also then when I came back to the marathon and was trying to run, like, 5:35 pace, it was like, that should be nothing. I ran 5 flat all spring. This is just a jog. So I think sometimes it helps, yeah, even now and again to dip in races where you have to kind of push the front end of the envelope, and then it feels easier to just kind of do a long effort at marathon pace.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, at least for me, when I've been approaching running, because I just started with the marathon and I came from a sport where we didn't do that much running. So
Mhm.
all my, like, when it comes to pace, I didn't have a relationship to pace before I started doing marathon training. So then it feels like the speed that I've been able to build up is just my marathon pace. So it's kind of like it's not big enough of a difference between my marathon pace and my 10K pace. And that I
Yeah.
think is, to some of us, at least when you're just approached the marathon, that can be an issue, because then it's also harder to, you get to a point where it's harder to improve because you are getting closer to not your top speed, but at least a speed that is much harder to stay at for that long.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because I do think there are some people who, like, half marathon and 10K pace are all just kind of similar, and yeah, you raise a good point in that the fact that I do have some speed, I think separates those
Yeah.
paces a little bit more, which I think makes it easier to improve on the marathon side.
Mm-hmm. No. Cool. What does a normal training week look like for you and the marathon build up?
So I think my top mileage was like 115, 117. But I only did that for 1 week. And then I had a couple weeks at 110 miles and then a couple at like 100 or 95. There were maybe 4 days of doubles a week. Um, and 2 of the 7 days did strength training. And then 2 days were workout, so Tuesday, most of the time, will be on the track and doing something at, like, lactate threshold or just below, so we did a lot of, like, 6 by mile. Um, I guess towards the end of the build, we started building a little bit more speed, so we did, like, are you familiar with a Michigan workout?
No. Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah, okay, so a Michigan is actually very fun. So you are basically doing descending reps both in distance and, in your speed getting faster. So we did 2K, 1,600, 1,200, 800, 400, and so we started at, like, 10K pace and then had to get faster, but then also there's a float mile in between all of the fast reps, which was supposed to be at marathon pace. So it's a pretty hard workout,
Yeah.
but it's supposed to be simulating, like, pace shifts, which, again, because I ran alone, I didn't do any pace shifts, but for someone like Annie who's dealing with, like, surges from the front of the pack, that's kind of a key workout, but I really enjoy workouts like that where you have to kind of reset, because I feel like sometimes when we do, like, a 6 by mile or an 8 by mile, it just gets very monotonous, so it's nice to feel like you have these, like, stark shifts in between. So, yeah, that's on Tuesday, and then on Friday, it is often some sort of, like, long aerobic tempo. So I mentioned that 12 miles alternating, or we do a lot of fartleks. So one of our most common ones is 3 minutes at LT and then 2 minutes at float continuously. So we did that for 60 minutes once and 75 minutes once. And I've heard that when you're under Coach Lundstrom for a long time, he makes you go up to 90 minutes of doing that, but I haven't done that yet. Um, so yeah, that's usually Fridays, and then Sunday is a long run. And
And
my team
what does it?
tends
Yeah.
to sorry,
No, sorry.
go
Go for
ahead.
it.
I was just gonna say
You're.
my team tends to do long runs faster than I had been previously doing them, so they
Uh-huh.
tend to be a lot more aerobic, and it's kind of like a third workout. So a lot of those long runs end up being at like 6:30 or 6:20 pace overall.
And so for you, what does that pace feel like when are you very tired when you're done, or is it kind of like, oh, that was a moderate run?
It really depends on the day. I think there were some days where I finished it and was like, "That felt great," and then there's some days where at, like, mile 6, I'm really slogging. But I think those days where I'm slogging are also beneficial because I feel like that sort of simulates, I don't know, miles like 15 to 18 of the marathon where you're, like, starting to get tired, you're not working super hard, but you're like, "Wow, I got a long way to go." So,
So what mileage did you get up to, or what distance did you get up to with the long run at the end of the marathon block?
I did a 26.5-mile run, so just
Wow.
just over a marathon.
Hmm. How did that feel?
That day, it actually felt really good. I think I averaged, like, 6:19 pace for the whole thing, and I really that day was practicing, taking gels and, like, taking enough gels, which is why it's so frustrating that my stomach rebelled because I was actually being good about practicing it, but I took a lot of caffeinated gels that day, which is probably why I ran so fast. But, yeah, it was that yeah, I felt pretty good when we were doing that one.
I want to ask you more about the fueling, because it's clear that you've come a long way since, the
Mhm.
first marathon that you did, where did you say that you had two gels during the
Yeah.
whole race?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, uh, but just before we move away from that training week, what does your strength training usually look like?
So we have a partnership with Training House, which is actually it's like a strength training place sort of. I don't actually know if it's affiliated with Twin Cities Orthopedics, but it's in the same building. Anyway, but it's like sports specific strength trainers, and so we have one trainer, shout out Jimmy if he ends up listening to this, who does a lot of running specific stuff. So we do a lot of like unilateral movements. So like, single leg, split squats. And then we also do quite a lot of like plyometric stuff to try to build power. And we do a lot of like 3 or 4 sets of like 6 to 8 reps. So it tends to be a little bit heavier weight. And then on Friday, there tend to be more plyometrics than, weights. But yeah, I don't feel like I lift super heavy, to be honest. I don't consider myself, like, super strong, but I've definitely gotten stronger since I started with Minnesota Distance Elite because of my old team, I just wasn't lifting at all. So, yeah, and I can feel it in my legs, honestly. Like, when we do hill stuff specifically, I feel a lot stronger. So
Yeah, because that is something that I've been wondering when I hear about runners doing strength training, and they say that they can feel it. So like, yeah, just what you said. What is it that you can feel? Is it that the pace comes easier? Yeah, what is that feeling that you're talking about?
so I historically have been not good at doing things like hill sprints, like, I'll just, like, watch everybody run away from me, and that hasn't been happening, so that's specifically what I mean, is that I can actually keep up with other people, and there's the other thing that I can tell that I can feel is, like, after the marathon, my hamstrings were sore, and with other races and other marathons that I've done, I've only felt soreness in my quads, so I don't know if that's more strength or that I've adjusted my form enough that I'm actually recruiting some of, like, my posterior chain instead of just being quad dominant, but I do think I would also attribute that to strength training.
I don't know what your take is on this, but just based on a lot of fast runners that I've had on, I feel like one thing that they have in common is just like you said, that they have heavy strength training in there. Because I feel like a lot of runners have kind of accepted that, okay, I need to have strength training in my program because I want to avoid injuries. But then I
Mhm.
keep hearing about, you know, few reps but heavier load. And not necessarily like you said, it's not about just being super strong. It's just that that is a part of your training. Is that something that you also kind of seen that the best ones are doing more of that, or is it still a lot of different ways of doing that also with the fastest ones?
That's a good question because I feel like I can really only speak to, like, Annie and Dakota, but I can say that this is the heavier reps or heavier weight, fewer reps is what they're doing. But yes, I should have mentioned a lot of it in addition to, building strength for hills is a lot of injury prevention, so that's also kind of why we do a lot of the unilateral stuff.
It would be very interesting to have someone like Jim, is that what you said?
Jimmy, yeah.
Yeah, on the podcast to hear more about that, because I think that maybe there's a trend now where people are moving more into the strength training also for runners and kind of seeing the benefits of that more than just the injury prevention and staying injury free.
Yeah, yeah, I can connect you 2, I bet he would be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, that would be great. One thing I want to ask you about before we head into the fueling, because I feel like that is kind of part of the strength and yeah, the strength training, and that is, I assume that you were using the Fast R3 shoes from. I never know how to pronounce the Puma. Is it Fast R3? Is it Faster 3? How do you pronounce it?
I call it fast R, but I actually now that you're saying that, I just made that assumption as well.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, anyways, I wore them, and like you said, they're so fast. My issue that I found was that it didn't seem like my ankles were kind of strong enough, that something happened where I got a little bit of an injury after. My calves were not very happy. And I've heard that from other people as well, but that doesn't take anything away from the shoe as like it's a fast shoe, but it just seems like you need to have a certain strength to be able to run with them for the full 26.2 miles. Uh, Do you have
Yeah,
the same experience or yeah?
I do, and I still adore them, and I think they're really fast shoes. But had I don't know now if it was a misdiagnosis of a partially torn Achilles in high school or if it was just really bad tendonitis, but I have one Achilles that's been bad since I was, like, 18, and there's certain shoes, like the Nike Alphafly, and then it started popping up, with the Puma Fast R, and my theory is that it's, like, the kind of high stack height such, like, forces you on your toes a little bit that does tend to irritate my Achilles, and so Jimmy does have me doing, like they're called eccentric calf raises where you, like, go down slowly, on just one foot at a time and then raise back up on both feet, and that's kind of to, like, strengthen your ankles, and so that's something that I've been doing, but yeah, I have the same problem with super shoes sometimes, unfortunately, and that yeah, I've heard a lot of that, not necessarily just with Puma, but with a lot of super shoes, a lot of people end up with, like, either lower leg or high hamstring, angry tendons or injuries, yeah.
Because that's honestly something that I would love to figure out. I have not had that issue with the Alpha Fly 3, but with the Puma,
Oh,
I had
okay.
that. So I had that challenge with the Puma, but honestly, like I could tell that they felt faster. So I wish that I could like find a way to whether that was through strength training or something else, but just make them a shoe for me kind of because I want to run in them, but it's not worth it if I'm getting injured after a long run in them, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think yeah, my take is that strength training helps a lot, and also, unfortunately, some of those shoes, it might just have to be a race shoe. Like, you might be able to get through a race without getting injured, but if you run every long run in them, then you're gonna get a little bit more irritation, and so I don't do long runs, and I don't do warm-ups and cool downs in, like, the Fast or R or another super shoe, I do all of that in a trainer, and then the fast shoe is for, like, specifically when I'm trying to go really fast.
Okay, that's a good advice for anyone listening and wanting to use the some shoes like that. Okay, fueling.
Mhm.
It seems like you've come a long way. I mean, New York, things like New York, it will always happen, I think. Like people will experience something like that. And you were saying that you also have something that makes you maybe more vulnerable for things like that. But how have you approached fueling throughout your career, like from that first marathon where you had two gels and up until today, where you are such a fast marathoner? What is it that you've done to get better at it?
So I think that first marathon really instilled a lot of fear of the bonk in me. So I've definitely even before I did that first marathon at grandma's, I was like, I have to nail down fueling before I start another one of these because it's I don't know if you've ever experienced a bonk, but it's not
Yeah,
fun.
it's not fun at all.
No, no, it just feels like your body is working against you. So, I've tried a lot of different gels, and I actually for a while was trying sports drinks, or not like Gatorade, but like I was using Science in Sport and using their powder to like make bottles. And as I said, that's mostly what I used for my first marathon at grandma's, but I found that I was just not able to take enough down, and I do think some of that is because of that acid reflux that I have, so things were just kind of going back up. So I've tried Morton, I tried the Science and Sport gels, and then this time around, I was using Precision Fuel, and so I did a lot of, like, reading online, it seems like most gels are pretty similar, like, at least the, like, kind of high performance gels, and so I decided, I'm just gonna pick one, and then my big thing this block was basically just trying to practice getting enough down every time I do a long run, and, every time I practice, once we do the warm up, I take a gel, and then I do the workout, and that mostly happened on accident. There was one workout that I did last spring where I was feeling kind of, like, dizzy on the warm up, and one of my friends on the team was like, "Oh, I have a gel." And I took it, and then I felt so great during the workout that I was like, "Oh, maybe I was just, like, hypoglycemic." And so I started doing that even during the track season, and then going into the marathon season, I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna take one before the workout, and then if it's a longer workout, I'm gonna take another gel during the workout as well, just to kind of train the stomach to start doing, digestion while I'm on the run." And then most long runs, I was taking at least 2 gels. I got up to, like, I think 6 gels on that marathon distance long run, which is still not quite as many as I knew I'd be trying to take during the marathon, but it's hard. It's hard to take them every, like, 3 miles.
Yeah, I heard that Joe Klecker during the New York City Marathon was gonna take, I don't know if he ended up actually doing it, but he was gonna take some crazy amount of carbs during the marathon. I don't understand how it's even possible.
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately, I think the target that most nutritionists give is, like, 60 to 90 grams of carbs an hour, and I don't think I've ever quite been able to hit that, but it's also kind of it's individual both to, like, your body size and how fast you're running, but also just, like, clearly, there's a fine line between taking enough for performance and then taking too much that you throw up, and I might have crossed that line a little bit, but it's something that I'll be continuing to fine-tune, and I haven't found anyone yet, but I am thinking that I probably wanna work with, like, a sports, registered dietitian for the next one just to make sure that I'm getting enough in and kind of working on seeing if maybe there's an intolerance to something in the gels or if I just need to do more gel training, yeah, a lot of my teammates don't do a lot of, like, gel training, which seems crazy to me, but I think they just have iron stomachs more so than I do. So, I'm jealous.
Yeah, I was gonna say, 'cause I was gonna ask you what you usually eat for breakfast, and then I remember, I'm pretty sure I heard Dakota said on a podcast that she has some yogurt or something in the morning, like dairy products, before a marathon. Uh, I'm not. I think it was her, but regardless of if it was her or not, I just don't understand. Like my stomach would not be very happy if I had dairy before a marathon.
No, I'm also lactose intolerant and vegan, so I couldn't do that. But
Hmm.
yeah, I tend to eat my whole life, I've just had a very sensitive stomach. So I do just like the Quaker oatmeal before a workout in a marathon. And then because I was feeling like, I was getting a little bit bonky or a little bit hypoglycemic on some of the cooldowns, even with taking that gel. I chatted with an RD, or a registered dietitian, and she suggested adding in a little bit of fat in the morning as well, so it's not just straight carbs. And so I'm adding almond butter to my oatmeal, and then I usually also have banana and just some, like, straight espresso. So that's usually my pre-race and pre-workout meal, and that usually sits pretty well, so I'm sticking with it for now.
Yeah, I feel like when you find something that works like that, you shouldn't really change that. That's not something you really need to change.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the morning of New York, I couldn't find almond butter, so I used peanut butter, but I feel like that probably wasn't the thing. I think it was the
No.
gels that made me throw up.
But you did mention that you're vegan, and I guess like to a lot of people, especially if you're not really conscious about it or aware of it, it can be hard to find enough nutrition when you are a vegan and a marathon runner. How has that been for you? Did you have to do a lot of research to make sure that you get everything that you need, or how has that been for you?
It's a good question, and I'm probably gonna give a semi-unsatisfying answer, which is that I don't really think about it that much, but I think I do have the advantage that I have been vegan since I was 18 and I just turned 26, so it's been quite a few years, and I think a lot of that I was kind of unknowingly doing, trial and error. Like, there was periods in college where I was anemic and I just felt really horrible, and so then at that period, I started adding in an iron supplement, and then I was still feeling horrible, and then I found out that there's certain things you have to do to actually absorb your iron, like take it separate from coffee and take it with vitamin C. And so and then I guess there was a period in college where I wasn't really thinking about protein and I felt really horrible. And so it's kind of like accumulated knowledge over the years that I've realized what actually makes me feel good. And I think another thing is that I've learned that I just can't, like, restrict at all. Like, if I'm hungry, I just eat as much as I wanna eat, and, plant proteins and vegetables tend to fill you up pretty fast, but not be as calorie dense as, like, an animal diet, and so when I am hungry, I'm just gonna eat until I'm full, and so I feel like I probably eat more volume than a lot of marathoners, but I've learned that that is how I actually feel strong in workouts. So I think a lot of it at this point is just kind of intuitive, but it is just like based on knowledge of when I felt really bad and what I've needed to change.
Can I ask what the reason or your motivation for the vegan diet was? Like I had Johannes Matschmann on, German marathon runner, and he really inspired me. I didn't go vegan, but I tried to be vegetarian for a while, and I honestly liked it. And I am still kind of going back and forth on that. But his motivation was just that he loves animals. What is yours?
Yeah, I honestly I have a lot of reasons, and the first one that I'm gonna give is like a little bit of a secret, which is that I didn't want to learn how to touch raw meat. It was just I was like, "I don't wanna cook that, that seems gross." But I also have always really loved animals and also just the environmental impact of being vegan and not consuming, like, mass-produced meat is a thing that I am interested in contributing to. Um, but I am as I mentioned, I'm also lactose intolerant, so in some ways I kind of felt like I was halfway there, and my family didn't eat, like, a lot of red meat or anything growing up, it was mostly chicken, and so I was like, "I'll just have tofu instead." Um, and so far I've been feeling good, so.
Yeah, because how did your body first react when you were 18? You said when you went vegan.
Yeah, it's I guess that's sort of a hard question because there was so much that was happening at that time. So I went vegan when I moved out of my parents' house and went to college because my mom had done the thing of like, you know, "I'm not gonna cook you vegan food, I'm gonna cook meat and you're gonna eat it or else you're gonna have to find your own food," and I was so busy at the time that I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll just eat your food." And so it was when I went off to college that I was like, "Great, this is my time, I'm gonna be vegan now." But of course, I'm also, going off to university, I'm eating dorm food, I'm also running, at the collegiate level for the first time, and so I know my body felt pretty bad that year, but I can't quite separate all the things. I actually do think I ended up gaining a little bit of weight that year, but I think, I was eating a lot more carbs than I was used to and probably just, like, not a ton of protein. So I think my diet was just I hadn't learned how to balance the vegan diet yet. And I think now I have, like, a pretty standard, like, staple set of meals that I eat, that tend to give me enough protein, and not, like yeah, enough protein and enough vegetables and not, like, simply just bagels, which I think is mostly what I ate when I was a freshman in college.
No, I think it's great, and I've been very curious about this myself for my own body to kind of figure out what it is that my body reacts or responds the best to, especially also like that comes from a very selfish point of view, but more like or a selfish motivation, and that is kind of like what does my body react the best to as an
Mhm.
athlete or to perform, and I've also been going back and forth, and I was thinking about it the other day that I really want to try to have a nutritionist tell me or help me out, not necessarily with vegetarian or vegan, but just to figure out, like you said previously, what is it that my body will perform the best with and what is it that I should avoid. And I think that there are so many things that even though we have a lot of information, there are so many things that like maybe small daily choices that we make with our diet that can have big impact on our training or our recovery, and it's an important thing to consider. So it's very very interesting, and I do think that my body kind of, I don't know if it recovered better, but when I was trying to be vegetarian for a while, then I felt like my body just processed the food better or easier, that it
Mm.
wasn't as hard. So it's an interesting topic.
It is, and I don't necessarily wanna be, like, an advocate for other athletes to go vegan because I feel like there's enough things that I haven't quite been able to replace, like, I know a lot of, registered dietitians really promote having, like, chocolate milk or something right after you finish lifting or even after you finish, like, a hard session just to promote recovery, and there isn't necessarily, like, really a vegan equivalent. Like, I think chocolate soy milk maybe, but, like, oat milk is pretty much just, like, water, like, there isn't really an equivalent there. And so, I love being vegan, but I'm like, I don't wanna come on here and be like, "Everyone should be vegan," because I do think it takes a lot of time to figure out how your body is gonna perform, and I think having a registered dietitian help you with that is not something that, a lot of people might be able to have access to, and I feel like that might be something that people need if they wanna be able to perform being vegan, like, right away.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think there are such big individual differences too on that. And I also think, and I genuinely believe that I think that a lot of us who are not vegetarian or vegan, that we believe that we need to have meat with every
Mhm.
meal. And that's kind of just, if you grow up with it, or if you're an athlete and you grow up in an environment where that is normal, that you think that that is what you need to do. And then that's not necessarily the case, but you also need to kind of snap out of that mentality of thinking that to be able to make those changes if you were to try it out too. But I think knowledge is key in that, and just figure out as much as possible before you try to do that, especially as an athlete, as you're kind of breaking down your body and trying to recover all the time. Like that's what what your life is all about when you're an athlete, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I will say, like, I'm still gathering knowledge about what I need to be doing for my body with this diet, like, my sister, is a pharmacist, and she has a friend who's a hematologist, and she texted me frantically a couple days ago, and was like, "Are you taking a B12?" And I'm like, "I think it's in my multivitamin," and she's like, "Well, apparently you can get macrocytic anemia if you're vegan and running so hard," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So, I don't know, yeah, I'm trying to build a knowledge base that, if somebody else wants to go vegan, I'll be happy to share, but clearly I'm still learning too.
Yeah, I think that's the same, or that's the case for everyone though, with the diet, regardless of being vegan or vegetarian, that we're all just learning. And but I appreciate what you're saying, that you're not you didn't use the word pushing it on other people, but kind of just encouraging others to be it, because I always admire people like yourself who are taking that, like making that choice, but it's also nice to not feel judged for not taking or making that choice. And that is uh something that, yeah, I just appreciate what you're doing. And I think I told Johannes that too, that the way you're talking about it, the way he talked about it, kind of inspires me to be more like that. And that inspires me much more than people who are telling me you have to, right? It's nice
Mhm.
to not be forced, but just motivated or inspired.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I just lost an AirPod. I'm so sorry if
Yeah.
that was
No, you're
loud.
good.
I'm gonna leave it.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't realize that there was such, like, a stereotype about vegans being pushy, but I have
Oh,
heard that from quite a
yeah.
few people. But, yeah,
I'm not
my
sure if that is, I'm not sure if it's a stereotype, but I think that, like, if you are, I don't know, if you call it unlucky or unfortunate to meet one or two, and you are spending time with them, and then you feel like you're being judged, then it's easy to
yeah.
just make that stereotype, I think. So I think that it's more about that than, and I don't feel, just want to clarify that, like when you said you were vegan, I did not automatically think that, oh, she's probably gonna push it on me or anything like that. It's more that, or judging me for it. It's more that I've realized that the two different ways of talking about it, it's like you have the one where you don't feel pushed at all. You just talk about, like, this is my motivation, this is why I'm doing it. And then I'm always leaving the conversation y- thinking about it myself. I'm like, oh, maybe I should head more into that direction myself. And then whenever people are like, oh, no, you should, do you have any idea, blah, 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 like kind of
Mhm.
trying to force it, then I'm automatically, and I think that's very human. You are kind of like, okay, but then I don't care. Like, I'm not going to do
Yeah.
it just because you tell me to. So,
Yeah, and I think that's true of a lot of things, not just
yeah,
veganism. But yeah, I only said that because
definitely.
I I had said, like, I didn't realize that that was a stereotype, and both my roommates, when I moved in with them, were like, "I thought you were gonna hate me because 'cause I'm not vegan," and I was like, why would I hate you? So
That's
it
so
is a
funny.
little bit of a stereotype, but yeah, I think
Yeah,
you're right. I
apparently.
think it's a small subset of vegans who feel that way.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, Elena, we're getting closer to the end of our conversation here, but I'm curious about your ambitions going forward. We briefly talked about it, where you said you wanted to be a professional athlete and get up there, but do you have any goals for yourself or things that you're seeing yourself doing in the future with the running?
It's a good question, and I think it's difficult because I'm getting my PhD right now, and that's not a thing that I anticipate stopping. So I don't want to say, like it's not a goal to be like a full-time professional athlete. But I do think that there's a lot of really good examples of women who are achieving in both their careers and in running. Gabriella Rooker is one of them that comes to mind. She's actually also from Minneapolis. Um, and yeah, so I think a big goal would be, to get a sponsorship, hopefully while I'm still in school. In terms of running goals, I think right now, big goal would be to run sub 225 and then kind of keep chipping away after that. I think I do see myself as, potentially being someone who can be like top 15, top 10 marathoner in the US, and I'm just kind of trying to get there. And then, if I get there, I'll set new goals, but yeah, that's kinda where my head's at right now.
When you talk about it, and I also see that as very realistic, but then when you start thinking about like top 10, 15 in the US, that is really, really good. Do you ever stop and just think about, even right now, how like good you are? Or yeah, because that's, if I was you, I would be like, oh my God, I'm starting to become quite the athlete. Is that something that ever?
Sometimes I think, as I mentioned, I'm really hard on myself both in terms of running and in terms of school, so I think I tend to have a very forward focus of, I'm not as good as these people right now, so I need to get better, but sometimes I do stop and think about the fact that, like, I'm doing workouts at my old college 5K PR pace, and it's some days sort of unbelievable that my body is able to do this, but it's also just, like, exciting, and that's why I keep doing it because it's, like, every day, even the bad days are exciting. I'm still better than I used to be, and I'm still excited to see where it goes. So,
Awesome. Last question. What is your next big race?
I'm so sorry, I don't have an answer yet.
You're good.
I we're thinking about reaching out to Boston, but I I have to TA next semester. Some of this, like, being in grad school is so embarrassing, like,
Hmm.
I had to fly back early from New York 'cause I had to go to math class, like, I feel like a kid, but, I have to TA in the spring, and it's a Monday class that I have to run discussion for, and
Ah,
Boston's obviously on a Monday.
yeah.
So I'm gonna be reaching out to the professor and see if I can get that off. If not, I'll probably end up doing grandma's marathon again, which is, semi-local. It's a great race, but I think we're hoping to get another major in and like take another shot at it on a bigger stage if that ends up being possible.
I guess it's hard for you to call in a sick day when you are probably gonna be top 10, top 15 or something at the
Yeah,
marathon. So it's pretty obvious that you are not sick.
yeah, when it's like you turn on the TV and you're like, "Oh, that's my TA." I mean, I don't know how many people are actually watching the Boston Marathon, but yeah, the point is well taken. It's a little obvious that you're not sick. So,
Yeah,
I'll just be upfront about it and hopefully he'll give me a pass, the professor, but we'll see.
I hope so. Otherwise, we have
Yeah.
to give, hopefully some listeners here have some context so they can call him or her up and be like, Elena should go to Boston. Give her the day
Yeah,
off.
maybe.
Okay. Thank you so much for guesting the Marathon podcast, and good luck with everything with the PhD and also with your running. Can't wait to see where you'll end up eventually.
Thank you so much.
I keep being amazed by these runners, amazing people. I feel like that is one thing that they all have in common. They're good, or two things that they have in common. They are good runners and good human beings. I appreciate that. And I appreciate this community. Really happy to be a part of it. And thank you for taking the time, Elena. And also thank you to you for listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with a friend. Tag the Marathon Podcast if you're listening to it on your run, wherever you're listening. Tag it on Instagram. Follow the podcast on Instagram. Follow it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and please give it a review. That would really help me. I think we have a little bit more than 60 reviews by now. It would be great to get that up to at least 100. So please help me out with that. And other than that, just enjoy your weekend. Have a good one. And thanks again for listening to the Marathon Podcast. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Watt Studio.